My wife secretly embezzled $250, $0 from our joint business, then blamed me for the theft during divorce litigation over the $2 million estate, and now I just found out she's been hiding a second family the entire time. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now let's begin the video, using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. Honestly, the most shocking part isn't just that she cheated, it's how she did it, with such cunning and arrogance, hiding a whole second family from me for years. It all started about 6 months ago. We had been married for almost 10 years, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty good thing going. Sure, there were the usual arguments, money, her constant bitching about how I didn't pay enough attention to her, and her tendency to blow up over small things. But I never thought she'd betray me the way she did. The first signs that something was off came when I noticed her phone acting strangely. She'd always been secretive about her texts, but suddenly she'd be sneaking her phone into the bathroom or locking it when I came near. It was subtle at first. She'd delete messages, hide her screen, that kind of thing. I'd catch her in tiny lies about where she was going or who she was talking to, but I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. Then about 3 months ago, I started noticing money missing from our joint account. Not a lot at first, maybe a few hundred here and there. I'd ask her about it and she'd roll her eyes, say she was shopping or paying bills. But I knew she was lying. I even found some strange receipts for hotels and restaurants I'd never been to in her purse. That's when I started digging a little more, quietly. What really set me off was when I found a large transfer, around $250, $0, embezzled from our business account. Our company was doing well and I trusted Lisa completely. She handled the books, or so I thought. But she'd been siphoning money for years, hiding it in offshore accounts, pretending it was for investments. When I confronted her about it, she denied everything, called me paranoid, and blamed me for not trusting her. She said I was just jealous because she was busy making money for us. That's when I really started to see her for what she was, a manipulative, lying bitch. She'd always been good at spinning stories, twisting the truth just enough to get her way, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew she had been lying about the money, and I had a gut feeling she was hiding something even bigger. And then, out of nowhere, I stumbled upon something that changed everything. I found a series of emails on her laptop, conversations with a guy named Mark. They weren't just casual chats. They were full of flirtation, plans to meet up, talk about how much they needed each other. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, the woman I loved, was having an affair with some guy she met at a conference months ago. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I had trusted her with my life, my business, my money, and she was out there screwing around behind my back. That was the moment I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I couldn't just do it like some idiot. I had to plan this carefully. Now I'm sitting here, still trying to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the money stolen, and now this second family she kept hidden from me all these years. I feel like I don't even recognize the woman I married. The woman I thought I knew is just a complete stranger, a manipulative, selfish bitch who used me and lied to my face. I don't even know how I got here, but I do know one thing. I'm done being the victim. It's time for some serious revenge. When I finally confronted Lisa about the emails, her reaction was just as I expected, full of bullshit and denial. She looked at me with that fake, innocent smile, the one she's used for years to get what she wants. "You're overreacting," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "That's just some stupid flirtation. It doesn't mean anything. You're jealous, paranoid, and frankly, you're ruining everything with your accusations." I couldn't believe how quick she was to lie, how she turned everything around on me. She's always been good at that, twisting facts, gaslighting, making me feel like I was losing my mind. but I had proof now. The emails, the bank statements, the receipts, they were all concrete. Still, she kept denying, kept pretending she was innocent, claiming I was just insecure and jealous. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness. Rage because she lied and cheated, and sadness because I genuinely loved her once. We had built a life together, our house, the business, our savings. I had trusted her with everything, and she just threw it all away with her lies and her secret second life. I decided I needed to get more evidence to make sure I wasn't jumping to conclusions. So I hired a private investigator. I kept my cool, played it smart. I knew she was hiding something, and I wanted proof that would hit her where it hurt. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything. Photos of her with Mark, recordings of her phone calls, even videos of her sneaking out late at night. Meanwhile, the money theft from the business kept gnawing at me. I'd uncovered that she'd embezzled $250,000, and she was still lying about her whereabouts, still pretending she was innocent. It was like she was living a double life, one where she was the perfect wife, and another where she was a criminal and a mistress. The more I learned, the more I realized she'd been planning this for years. The second family, the affair, the money, all connected. She'd been using me, using our business, using her charm to cover her tracks. I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier. I was angry, betrayed, humiliated. I'd given her everything, and she'd just taken it all for herself. The breaking point came when I found out she'd been hiding her second family, a whole other life she kept from me. I discovered her husband over there, a guy named David, who was completely unaware of me, of our marriage, of the fact that Lisa was his wife too. She'd been juggling two families, two lives, and I was just another pawn in her game. I've never been so furious in my life. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she break my trust and then turn around and accuse me of being the bad guy? I felt a cold, burning rage that I never knew I was capable of. I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't just walk away from this. I had to make her pay. I started planning my revenge. Not a petty one. I wanted her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to lose everything she cared about, just like she made me do. I knew her weakness was her money and her reputation. If I could expose her, ruin her carefully crafted lies, she'd see what real betrayal feels like. That's when I decided I'd take her down piece by piece, until she understood she couldn't get away with it. I'm not proud of it, but I also know I can't just let her get away with everything. She's destroyed my life, my trust, my sense of security. It's time she felt some of that pain. I'm done being the victim. I've got her cornered now, and I plan to make sure she regrets ever crossing me. After gathering all the evidence, I knew I had to move carefully. Lisa was manipulative and cunning, and I wasn't about to let her spin her way out of this mess. The first step was to make sure I had irrefutable proof. I didn't want her to deny or lie her way out of it again. So I started planning how to expose her in a way that would leave no room for her to wiggle free. I reached out to a lawyer I trusted, someone who specialized in both divorce and financial crimes. I wanted to understand my options, especially since she'd embezzled so much money and was hiding a second family. The lawyer told me I could use the evidence I had to press charges for theft, and the affair could be used as grounds for divorce. But I wasn't interested in just leaving her. I wanted her to pay, to lose everything she'd been hiding. While I was making these plans, Lisa kept acting innocent, as if nothing had changed. She'd throw tantrums, insult me, accuse me of spying on her, and lie about her whereabouts. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. I watched her lie so effortlessly, it made my stomach turn. I knew her too well now. Every sneer, every fake smile, every word she spat out was part of her act. I also started digging into her second family. I hired a private investigator to get photos and videos of her with David, her husband. It was sickening to see her with another man, acting like they were in love, when she was still pretending to be a perfect wife to me. The more I saw, the angrier I got. How many lies had I lived through? How many nights had she sneaked out, knowing I was at home, trusting her? It was all a lie. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her finances. I found out she'd been funneling money into accounts under false names, paying for her second family's lifestyle without me knowing. She'd been living a double life, using my money and my trust as her own personal ATM. The betrayal hit me hard not just because she cheated, but because she used me like a tool, a source of income, a mark for her lies. One night I decided to confront her directly. I waited until she was drunk. She always got sloppy when she drank, and then I brought up the evidence I'd collected. I showed her the emails, the bank statements, the pictures with David. Her face twisted into anger, then panic. She spat out some nonsense about how I was crazy, how I was accusing her of things she didn't do, and how she was done with this whole mess. But I didn't back down. I told her I knew everything about her affair, the second family, the money theft. I told her I was done being played. Her reaction was to scream and cry, trying to manipulate me into believing she was innocent, that I was just jealous and insecure. But I had had enough. I knew her game now, and I was ready to take her down. I decided I'd use the evidence I had not just to divorce her, but to make sure she lost everything. I wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal, to see her reputation ruined, to understand what it feels like to be left with nothing. I was planning to expose her publicly, to destroy her carefully crafted image as a successful, loving wife. I wanted her to realize she wasn't untouchable. The plan was to file for divorce, but also to report her for embezzlement. I hired forensic accountants to trace the money, and I was ready to drag her through court. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, she always did, but I was prepared. I'd make sure she paid for what she did. I wanted her to lose her money, her reputation, her freedom if necessary. I also started preparing myself emotionally. I knew this was going to be a long, ugly fight. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally taking control. No more hiding, no more pretending. I was going to end this nightmare on my terms. I didn't want to just walk away. I wanted her to understand she couldn't cheat and lie her way out of this. She'd been caught. And now I was going to make sure she paid every single price. I was done being the victim. Now I was going to be the one who finally got revenge. The day I filed for divorce, I felt like I was finally taking back control. It wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about exposing her lies and making her face the consequences of her actions. I made sure the paperwork detailed everything: her affair, the second family, the embezzled money, and all the manipulation she'd pulled. I wanted her to realize that her world was crumbling, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it this time. Lisa's reaction was predictable. She went ballistic. She screamed, cursed, called me every name in the book. She accused me of being jealous, paranoid, a terrible husband who couldn't handle her success. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was destroying her life and that I was just jealous because she was better than me. But I just sat there calm, watching her unravel. I knew her game now. I'd seen her true face, and I was done buying her lies. The court process moved fast. Once I had all the evidence, the forensic accountants presented reports showing how she siphoned off hundreds of thousands from our business over the years. The emails with Mark and photos with David were enough to prove she'd been living a double life. The judge was appalled at her deception and her blatant theft. It was satisfying, honestly, seeing her face when she realized how badly she'd screwed herself. Meanwhile, I contacted the authorities about the embezzlement. They started investigating her financial records, and it wasn't long before she was formally charged. The legal process was brutal, but it was necessary. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, to feel the full weight of her betrayal. I wasn't interested in just walking away with a divorce. I wanted her to lose her freedom, her money, her reputation. But the most shocking part came when I finally got to confront her face-to-face during the court hearings. She looked at me with those cold, calculating eyes, trying to manipulate her way out. I saw through her. I saw the woman who'd lied, cheated, and used me for years. I told her exactly what I thought that she was: a selfish, manipulative bitch who thought she was untouchable. I told her she'd lost everything that mattered to her: her marriage, her money, her freedom. The courtroom was packed with people I'd hired to testify: the private investigator, the accountants, the lawyers. When the judge finally handed down her sentence for the embezzlement and adultery, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. She'd been caught, and she was going to pay. I knew she'd try to fight me, to come back and manipulate her way out of it, but I was prepared for that. I had lawyers, evidence, and a resolve I never knew I possessed. In the aftermath, Lisa was left with nothing. Her reputation was in ruins, her second family was exposed, and she faced years in court fighting for her freedom and her assets. I'd managed to recover most of the stolen money, but more importantly, I'd taken control of my life again. I was free from her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. It wasn't easy. I felt broken and angry for a long time, but I knew I was better off without her. Looking back, I realize how naive I was to trust her so completely. I let her manipulate me into believing she was perfect, that she loved me. But the truth is, she was just a master at deception. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people you love the most can also hurt you the deepest. And in the end, the only way to truly move on is to face the pain, expose the truth, and take back what's yours. Now I'm rebuilding. I've started over financially, emotionally, and mentally. I still feel the sting of betrayal. That's not something you just get over, but I'm learning to live with it. My advice to anyone out there who's been betrayed like this: don't wait. Get the evidence, stand tall, and fight back. Because if you don't, they'll keep lying, cheating, and stealing from you until there's nothing left. After everything settled down legally and financially, I thought I'd finally get a moment to breathe. But the truth is, the emotional toll was just beginning to hit me. I'd gone through the worst betrayal I could imagine, her stealing from me, having a second family, lying through her teeth, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. I never thought I'd be the guy who'd get cheated on, lied to, and robbed blind, all by the woman I loved. The worst part was the aftermath of discovering her second family. I tracked down her husband, David, who was completely blindsided. He thought Lisa was this perfect wife and mother, and suddenly he found out she'd been living a double life. I met with him once briefly, just to give him the facts. Seeing the shock and betrayal in his eyes hit me harder than I expected. I told him everything I knew about her affair, her lies, her theft, and he was devastated. Honestly, I felt a strange sense of solidarity with him. We'd both been played by the same woman, and I think that made us more aware of how deeply she'd manipulated us both. In the weeks that followed, I started to realize how much this whole thing had changed me. I was no longer the naive guy who trusted blindly. I became cautious, guarded. I cut off all contact with Lisa, refused to let her manipulate me anymore. I even changed my phone number and moved some of my accounts just to make sure she couldn't come back and try to twist things again. The anger still simmered beneath the surface, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally free from her grip. I also had to deal with the fallout at work. Our business was in chaos after the embezzlement scandal. Clients started pulling out, partners were wary, and I had to spend weeks rebuilding trust and cleaning up the mess she left behind. The stress was overwhelming, but I knew I had to keep going. I started working with new accountants, brought in some legal advisors, and slowly began to restore what she tried to destroy. Throughout all this, I noticed something else. I was more aware of who I was and what I wanted. For so long, I'd been blinded by her charm, her lies, her manipulations. Now I saw clearly. I realized I'd lost years trusting someone who didn't deserve it. I also learned a lot about myself, about my resilience, my ability to survive even the worst betrayals, and my capacity to rebuild. It's been a long, painful process, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. One thing that kept me going was the realization that I wasn't alone. I reached out to friends, family, even a counselor. Talking about everything helped me process what I'd been through. I learned not to blame myself. She was the one who lied, cheated, stole, and manipulated. I was just the victim of her carefully crafted game. But now I'm taking control. I'm learning to trust again, but more cautiously. I'm rebuilding my life on my own terms, and that feels pretty damn good. I still get angry sometimes, especially when I think about the years I wasted trusting her blindly. But I also feel stronger. I know I'll never let someone like her do this to me again. I've learned that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing out. But I'm climbing now. Step by step, I'm reclaiming what's mine, and I refuse to let her or anyone else take that away from me again. If there's one thing I want others to take from my story, it's this. Don't ignore the signs, don't dismiss your gut feelings, and never underestimate the power of evidence. Because if you do, you might end up like me, broken, betrayed, and trying to pick up the pieces of a life that was almost stolen from you. But the good news, you can rebuild. I am, and so can you. Looking back now, I realize how much I've been through and how it's changed me, probably forever. I used to think love meant trusting blindly, believing the best in someone, but now I see that trust has to be earned every single day. Lisa's betrayal shattered that illusion for me. She took everything, my money, my trust, my happiness, and she did it with a smile on her face, thinking she could get away with it all. But she was wrong. The thing I've learned most is that betrayal isn't just about the act itself, it's about the destruction it leaves behind. It's the feeling of being used, manipulated, and discarded. But it's also about resilience. I won't lie, there are days when the pain comes rushing back, when I wonder how I didn't see it sooner, how I let her get so close. But I also know I can't change the past. All I can do is move forward, stronger and wiser. I've come to accept that sometimes people are just bad enough to lie, cheat, steal, and betray those who love them. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also a lesson. I refuse to let her define my future. I've started focusing on myself, on my healing, and on building a life that's honest and true. I've learned that the best revenge isn't about revenge at all. It's about living well without her, without the lies. I want to share this story because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe you're going through something similar, feeling betrayed and lost. Believe me, I've been there. It's the worst feeling in the world, but it's also the moment you realize your strength. You find a way to stand back up, dust yourself off, and keep going. You learn that betrayal doesn't have to break you, it can make you stronger, more cautious, more aware. So here's my final thought. Trust is fragile. Be careful who you give it to. Watch for the signs, listen to your gut, and don't ignore the small red flags. Because if you do, you might end up like I did, devastated, betrayed, and trying to piece your life back together, but I promise you can do it. You can rebuild. You can move on, and you can find happiness again, even after the worst kind of betrayal. And as for Lisa, she's lost everything she thought she had. Her lies caught up with her, and she's paying the price. But I've learned that the real victory isn't in revenge. It's in reclaiming your peace, your dignity, and your life. That's what I'm doing now. That's what I want anyone reading this to remember. No matter how deep the betrayal, there's always a way out. You just have to find it.